Yeah. Hello, boys and girls. How are you? Today's topic, John Locke. Yes. So before we understand John Locke, I'd like to ask a question to all of you. Why is there this stereotype that women cannot drive well or women make terrible drivers? Why is this? Even women say this. Why is this? Why is this stereotype? Is there any truth to it? Is there any logic to it? There is no logic, there is no truth to it. Or if so, why is it? It's because of all of us, because of the society. Are they innately terrible drivers? They're born terrible drivers? No. There's no difference. There are women who drive Formula 1 cars, NAS cars or whatever, race cars. They all know how to drive. But why is this stereotype there? Because of society, patriarchy. Why? Did you ever wonder why? Most of you didn't. A young boy, 14 years old, wants to ride his bike, wants to drive a supercar, secretly takes his father's bike or car out for a ride with his friends. As he grows up, वीरे गेड़ी चल दे यहाँ, गेड़ी रूट, ड्रिफ्ट करते हैं, बाइक में टूर जाते, लद्दाख जाते हैं भैया. Are girls encouraged to do all these? Do girls, 14-year-old girls, secretly take their scooties or motorcycles or cars outside? No. They are encouraged to drive a car only when they get a license for a specific purpose, to go to work or to go to college. Never to drift or to compete or race or gedi. No. Because they're men's activities, correct? Women are forced to be inside homes while men are pushed outside, explore the world. Ladakh chale jao, bullet mein chale jao, Ladakh. Women are not encouraged. Competitive spirit to drive. A father brings home Top Gear, Supercar magazine, Top Gear, Overdrive or something. Fast and Furious. Why am I telling all this? What does John Locke has to say regarding this? What does he have to say here? Today's thinker, boys and girls. John Locke yes, English political philosopher of the 17th century. Who is John Locke? English political philosopher of the 17th century. Where? First, we know who it is. Who Katham? Where is he in the syllabus? GPS, PSIR. Where is he in the syllabus? Paper 1. Section A, subtopic 10, Western political thought. He is the fifth thinker. Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli, Thomas Hobbes, and John Locke. Why is he in the syllabus? Next question. Why John Locke? Why is he important to political theory, political thought, and political philosophy? Spoke about natural rights, government by the people, government governing based on the consent of the governed, the people, rule of law, constitutional government, parliamentary supremacy, toleration, pluralism, secularism, right? Right to life, liberty, property, right to revolt and resist an unjust government which is violating the natural rights. So, but these are many, many things. Why these things, these different things make John Locke very important. But let's start step by step. Let's start step by step. Let's connect everything and let's do a full circle here. Right? So, why that question at the beginning of the lecture as to why there is this stereotype that women make terrible drivers? Because John Locke says, Locke says, he says, the mind is tabula rasa. Right? The mind is tabula rasa. What does it mean? Mind is a blank slate. The mind is a blank slate, boys and girls. This is a blackboard, blank board, or a blank slate. Right? So, let's draw right. The mind is a blank slate. Slate or tabula rasa. It's the Latin version of blank, Latin way of blank slate means tabula rasa in Latin. Right. What does it mean? Why am I connecting this with the question? Patriarchy is the reason behind that stereotype. Yes? Are women born, like I said, are women innately born to be bad drivers? No, they are not. They are like men, blank slates, male and female. There is nothing innate. So, when a boy or a girl grows up, kids are, like they say, impressionable, right? They're impressionable. Nurture. Girls by nature are not terrible drivers. The nurture makes them terrible drivers. Why? Because the society, the girl's parents, the relatives, the friends don't push the girl out and tell them, drive, ja beti, gaadi chalao, sab karo, enjoy your life. So it depends on the inputs. All human beings are born with blank slates. Now let's talk about John Locke. Men are not born good or evil. Men are not born Christian, Protestant, Catholic, or Hindu or Muslim. Men are taught to be how to be a good Christian or how to be a bad Christian. Education, society, socialization, meeting new people, learning new ideas, new concepts. Finally choosing the good life based on your experiences. Right? The experience of a girl child to go out and drive and do drifting and gaiety and everything. The sensory experience that it gives, the muscle memory. John Locke calls it sensation. We learn things by experience. Right? With our senses, he was an empiricism. He was an empirical philosopher. John Thomas Hobbes was a materialist, a strict, extreme materialist. He said the whole universe is made up of matter. Matter is particles in motion, and our desires and everything is because of those particles in motion. John Locke, yes, he did accept Hanji by materialism, but he was more of an empiricist. For him, everything depended on the senses. Boys and girls, the senses. The sense of sight, your eyes, your nose, your ears, the touch, the smell, these things. And of course, experience. Sensation, experience. Mind is tabula rasa, sensation. Kya ho raha hai idhar? That we are not innately bad drivers. We are not innately evil. Everything depends on the nurture that we get. Nurture, not just not nature, nurture. N-U-R-T-U-R-E, nurture, socialization, learning, experiences, sensations. Because we are born a blank slate, all these things fill up the tabula rasa, fill up the blank slate, and we grow into a person, into whatever we want. Based on those experiences, we'll find the right path or the good life, whatever we like. Right? So we're not destined to be something by when we are born. No, we choose to be something. We become something based on the nurture and the socialization that we get. Right? And different people have different experiences. Different people have different experiences. How is this? Let me tell you. I feel the water is very cold. I ask the people here to give me warm water. They think it's warm. I think it's cold. We are the same human being. It's the same water, but the experiences are different. Right? The same way we are blank slates, individuals have different versions, different experiences of the same thing, different versions, right? Not everybody will think, हाँ ये गरम कॉफी है, ये ठंडी कॉफी है, नहीं. Now we'll connect different sensations, blank slate. Locke gave this concept in his essay concerning human understanding. Right, so from blank slate, we will connect it to his essay concerning toleration. Right, toleration. John Locke was not an atheist, materialist atheist like Thomas Hobbes. John Locke was deeply Christian. Right. And he believed, of course, God created all of us. We're all God's creation. Thomas Hobbes believed we're all matter, that's all. There's no God. Locke was a deep Christian. But to an extent, he believed in science. Like even now we have people who believe in religion and God. At the same time, they could be scientists. They could be rocket scientists. Anyway, John Locke was that complex character. Different experiences, different sensations of different individuals. So there is diversity, depends on individual to individual. Individual, I'm saying individual. John Locke was an individualist, right? So what does John Locke tell us? In his essay concerning toleration, he says there is no one idea of the good or the one idea of the good life. Because, boys and girls, 100 years before John Locke, Christianity split into two versions or two sects: Protestantism, Catholicism, Catholic versus the Protestants. That culminated in the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, which ended after the Peace of Westphalia, right? The 30 Years' War, religious strife, civil war. (1618 to 1648), 30% of the Germans died in this war because the battlefield was the Holy Roman Empire, Germany. Europe saw so much death and destruction for 30 years because of religious strife. Two versions of Christianity fighting each other. Kings who had adopted different versions of Christianity within Europe fighting each other over religion. And there was a lot of discrimination. Catholic England had become a Protestant country. John Locke's country, England, was a Protestant country. And a lot of Catholics were discriminated against in England at the time. Right? So, John Locke says, we are mere mortal beings. We are human beings. We are mere mortals. We understand. We are born blank slates. We don't understand anything besides our own experience. We're all mortal beings. How can we decide or determine the ultimate idea of good? The idea of the good life essentially was the religious life at the time. Which religion had the ultimate idea of the good life? Which religion was perfect? We cannot decide that. We are mere mortal human beings. And the state is also a human creation. How can the state decide what religion to follow? For the people, for the community, for the commonwealth. So we are connecting his tabula rasa to his essay concerning toleration. We human beings, we are mortal men, puny in front of God. God created all of us. God created this pen, this chair, this car, everything around us is a creation of God. And if we are destroying each other, we men are God's creation, we are destroying God's creation when we destroy each other. The possessions all around us, the trees, the food, the animals, the fruits, everything, all resources, they're also God's creation. We're destroying that. There's a Christian, his toleration based on Christianity, based on his religious, biblical beliefs. He was not an atheist telling everybody to be secular, for the state to be tolerant. So he's saying human beings, we mortal human beings cannot decide the ultimate idea of the good life, cannot decide which religion is superior. The state, which is a human creation, cannot decide which religion is superior. Naturally, there should be toleration. Every individual is a blank slate, will have different experiences, will have different sensations. Therefore, he will decide. He will choose either this life, if it could be the Protestant life, it could be the Catholic life, it could be the Sanatan Dharma, it could be anything. Different individuals will have different experiences based on different nurture, sensations. And the state, being a human creation, cannot decide which idea of the good religious life is superior. Therefore, the state has to be neutral, tolerant, right? So, toleration, state has to be neutral, right? Therefore, secular. State neutrality, secularism, yes, boys and girls, highly abused, misunderstood word in Indian politics today. Secular, you're secular, you're bhakt, you're sanghi. So many things. Or if you're familiar with this word, secular. John Locke is talking about secularism here. The state has to be neutral and tolerant of all religions within the nation state. Right? So it's talking about toleration. Every individual is a blank slate, is diverse, has diverse understandings of the good life as to what he has to do. Right? It's talking about human dignity. That man is a rational being. He can choose to be whatever he wants, whatever she wants. We're blank slates. Nobody's unequal. Nobody's born to be evil or good. Nobody's born to be a slave. Nobody's born to be some caste or some kshatriya. No, we're all blank slates. He's talking about individualism, liberty. Liberty, individualism. Thomas Hobbes had already talked about individualism. Right? So, udhar se we'll connect. Individualism, natural rights. Understand natural rights. Why? Because, boys and girls, Locke believed God created all of us, everything around us, each other. What Thomas Hobbes asked, the question that he asked, what would happen if man finds himself in the absence of government, in the absence of the state? What would happen to man? What would men do to each other? Men are quarrelsome, men are selfish, self-seeking, self-regarding, men can kill each other, men are capable of killing each other. What would happen if man finds himself in the absence of the state? Thomas Hobbes said it would be a war of everyone against everyone. Death and destruction, state of nature will be a state of war. What did Locke say? No. Locke said, men, Nature, everything is created by God. So in the state of nature, there is peace. Men don't kill each other because men believe there are natural rights. What are these natural rights? Right to life, because we are God's creation. Naturally, when men know that they're all created by God, right to life, liberty, and possessions. Possessions, not property. That is a legalistic term. Possessions. Because everything is nature's bounty, the gift of God, the Almighty, the Creator. Right? So, natural rights. Man in the state of nature enjoyed natural rights. Rights are not given by the state. Hobbes says, rights ये सब state देता है आपको. Locke said no. Man had these inalienable rights before the creation of the state itself, in the state of nature. In that situation, when there was no government. Right? Natural rights. If any of you are seeing this on YouTube, in the description box, you can see my lecture on Thomas Hobbes, how he described the state of nature, how life was in the state of nature. The links are given in the description box. You can open them. Right? You will understand this better. And anyway, now we're understanding John Locke ka introduction. Introduction to John Locke. Right? John Locke ki parichay. Right. So, individual, his concerns regarding the individuals. The individuals had natural rights. We're understanding introduction. Yes, why John Locke is important. The individual had natural rights even before the government came. Right. So if in the state of nature, men had natural rights. Right. Social contract बनाएंगे और सरकार को establish करेंगे. So, would the people relinquish their rights to life, liberty, and property after the emergence of the state? Would they give up those rights? State आ गया, सब चंगा है. सब हमें rights कुछ नहीं चाहिए, ले लो. जो हमें state of nature था, जो rights, अभी हमें आवश्यकता नहीं है क्योंकि सरकार आ चुका है भैया. अभी क्यों चाहिए? That is wrong. Locke says no. The sole purpose of the creation of the state is to protect those very natural rights that men have always enjoyed. Right to life, liberty, and possessions. State aane ke baad, right to life, liberty, and property. Possessions become property after the emergence of the state because state enforces the contracts. आपने अपना घर बेच दिया. Who will acknowledge that sale? It is the state. Registrar office क्यों जाते हैं? सब broker की दुकान में सब खत्म नहीं होता है ना? Right? You go to the government office because the state recognizes your property, enforces the contract. Right to life, liberty, and property. So, the sole purpose of the state is to protect these natural rights. Right? Liko. So what kind of government can protect those natural rights? Right to life, liberty, and property, possessions? Can an absolute king do that? Locke was the father of liberalism. His primary concern was not the perpetuation of government, was not the success of government, was not stable political order. His primary concern was the individual, his welfare, his happiness, his natural rights. Not the continuation and perpetuation and the survival of government. No. State of nature अच्छा था, ठीक ठाक था, natural rights था. Locke's primary concern was individual rights, individual liberty, his right to life, liberty and possessions, property. So what sort of government can guarantee these? A government by the people. A government by the people. John Locke's father had served in the parliamentary army of Oliver Cromwell in the English Civil War. Yes? What happened? English Civil War, 1641 to 1648. In the first half of the 17th century, King of England had fought Parliament of England, right? Who had the ultimate authority? Who was sovereign? Who won the battle? Yes, all of you now know. Parliament is supreme in England, in the UK. So parliamentary supremacy was established in this war, where king and parliament fought each other. And John Locke's father was on the parliamentary side, led by Oliver Cromwell. Right? So, John Locke, of course, naturally believed he was on the side of Parliament, and Parliament was representing the will of the people. Yes? Locke's concern, individual, his natural rights. He would be supporting Parliament. He'd be supporting government by the people. Yes, Parliament, temple of democracy. So, Locke talked about government by consent. Government which is accountable to the people. So, he talked about consent, accountable government, accountable to the people. Regarding what? Natural rights. Yes? Accountable representative government. Accountable representative government. Yes. And of course, majority rule. Election, people जाना पड़ेगा. Parliament, majority. He also talked about majority rule again. Even now, most of the decisions are made with the rule of majority. Majority rule. Yes? These are many of the ideas which make John Locke very important to our studies. Why is he there in the syllabus? He's there in the syllabus because of his contributions to political thought, right? His ideas of the good government, natural rights of man, government by the people, government by the consent based on the Ashirwad and the permission to govern given by the people. He was also in favor of constitutional government because his primary concern was the individual. Naturally, in a society, think about it, who is more stronger? Is the mighty Leviathan, the state, the monster, the all-encompassing, the awesome state, not the awesome that we see on Facebook or Instagram, oh, very awesome, awesome food. No. Awesome, which can inspire awe, command, obedience. Right? The enormity of the state powers. Awesome, awesome, the original awesome, not the Americanized awesome that we all see on WhatsApp or status or whatever. Leviathan should be limited. Right? Why? Because if the power of the state is too much and unlimited, whose rights, whose natural rights are compromised? It is the rights of the individual. To protect the liberty of the individual, powers of the state have to be limited. There should be bounds and boundaries. So Locke was also in favor of constitutional government, right? Constitutional government. Constitutional government, limited constitutional government, accountable government, representative government, government based on consent, government based on majority rule. John Locke. Yes? So, all these ideas, his right to life, liberty, and of course, very, very important, right to property. Right to property, possessions. इसका impact क्या था? What was the impact? First, let's take the biggest thing, right to property. Right to property, feudal times in the Middle Ages. The middle classes did not have much property, were not encouraged to hold property. All the landed zamindars, they held all the property. And now, Parliament is supreme, the glorious revolution. After the English Civil War, 1641 to 1648, then in 1688, the glorious revolution happened. Right after this, John Locke writes his 2 treatises of government. Glorious revolution ho gaya, where it's called glorious because they say it was bloodless, right? So, after the Glorious Revolution, permanently, Parliament became supreme. The supremacy, who's supreme? The king or Parliament? Parliament became supreme, right? So, think about it. Parliament represents the middle classes. Parliament represents the middle classes. Middle classes are out in the cities, living together, in close proximities. प्रॉब्लम हो गया सरकार के खिलाफ, मूवमेंट करना है, आंदोलन करना है, वायलेंस करना है, दंगा करना है, जो भी, जब लोग इकट्ठा रहते हैं, इट्स ईजियर टू मोबिलाइज. यस, दे ऑल लिव्ड इन लंडन, दे ऑल हैड वोटेड फॉर देयर मेंबर्स ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, राइट? मिडिल क्लासेस में, अर्बन सेंटर्स में क्या क्या होगा? द इकोनॉमी इज मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स, division of labor is more complex. There are artists, craftsmen, cobblers, different people practicing different vocations and professions live in the cities. Right? The middle classes support Parliament. The merchants, the dukan wala, the kirana store wala, all of them support Parliament. All of them want property, rights to property. Don't want unreasonable taxes being imposed. Right? Taxes are going down. The merchants, those inventors who invented the steam engine, the handlooms, they all had parliamentary support. John Locke said, right to property is an inalienable natural right. So this gave an impetus and fillip to the industrial revolution that happened in England in the 18th century after John Locke's death. Because of this industrial revolution and the money that was coming in, the money that England was making, they could build the British Empire where the sun never set. The mighty British Empire, right? John Locke, his importance, the importance that he gave to rights to property, right? Made all the merchants, the traders, the entrepreneurs, merchants of the East India Company, which was trading in India and East Indies, they all had now political backing. Where? In Parliament. Industrial revolution happens. What an impact! Changed the whole world. The West came to dominate the rest. The West dominated the rest, all of us, because of this. Right? Industrial revolution. और क्या? Because of John Locke, there was this break from the past. John Locke, boys and girls, freed mankind, freed all of us. Not us, of course. For us to be free, we had to wait till 1947. Freed Europe or people of England, but in theory, mankind, from the stranglehold, from the clutches of the absolute kings, from the feudal lords of England, and from the popes and the priests and the archbishops. Locke freed the individual from the clutches and the stranglehold of absolute kings, of the feudal lords and the popes. Right? One by one, let's understand how he did that briefly. This is an introductory lecture. Yes, first, he freed mankind from absolute kings. What does he do? In his work, the two treatises of government. The two treatises of government. Treatise matlab kya? Shastra, Artha Shastra, Dharma Shastra, India Shastra, Shashi Tharoor's book. Right? So, the two treatises of government. First, he talks about the basis of political authority. There, John Locke targeted another English philosopher called Robert Filmer. So Robert Filmer Sir Robert Filmer. Sir Robert Filmer. I mentioned earlier that England had a civil war from 1641 to 1648, where the royalists, royal supporters of the king, royalists, went to war with parliamentarians, right? Those who wanted parliament to be supreme. During that time, Sir Robert Filmer wrote a book called Patriarcha. Anyway, we'll get to that later. We'll understand everything properly, part by part. We're still understanding the broad introduction to John Locke. Right. He said, kings are anointed by God. God ordained Adam and Eve, Bible. God ordained Adam to rule over mankind, and all the kings are Adam's successors. The kings are the ministers of God, anointed by God. These ministers are ruling us on behalf of God. Therefore, kings are not answerable to the people. They're not answerable to parliament. They're answerable only to God. And we, Aam Aadmi, if we submit to the will of the king, we're essentially submitting to the will of God himself. John Locke, says, John Locke was a Christian, was a devout Christian. But John Locke destroyed Robert Filmer's argument in the first treatise of government. दो treatise है उसमें पहली में इसमें खत्म कर देता है. बोलता है भैया, how can king be absolute? King कौन है? Creation of God. Mortal human being है वो. पहले क्या बोला? What did he say at the start? Tabula rasa. Mind is a tabula rasa. In that what he says? We all are individuals, blank slates. Right? Then what he says? We understand everything based on sensation and experience. Then in his essay concerning toleration, he says, we mortal human beings, we cannot decide what is the ultimate good. He says, kings are just mortal human beings. How can kings have extreme, unquestionable power? They are not perfect. They don't know what the good life is. They're human beings, creation of God. Absolute powers mean the king can harm the subjects. And subjects are also creation of God. Right? So the king The divine rights theory. So Robert Silmer किसको defend किया था? We've discussed. It is there on YouTube also. Divine rights theory. Divine rights theory. John Locke destroyed divine rights theory. Another point, we are talking about what? How he freed mankind from absolute kings, leviathans. He also said what here? Individual, natural rights, government by consent, based on consent, government by the people, accountable to the people, representing the people. And the sole purpose of government is what? Protecting the natural rights of men. Right? So on two counts, by destroying the divine rights theory, he is also a social contract thinker. We'll understand his terms of social contract, state of nature one by one after the introduction, of course, boys and girls. But John Locke, like Thomas Hobbes, was a contract thinker. Government, state, they're all products of the contract. Right? Not God. Government is a human creation. Man is the God's creation. Anyway, so divine rights theory say, yeah, he destroyed absolute kings. He freed man from absolute kings. Then he freed mankind from the feudal lords. Talks about right to property. All individuals are entitled to hold property. Property and possessions, they're all God's creation, resources. जो नेचर का रिसोर्सेस है, लैंड है, उस लैंड के ऊपर we spill our sweat, we spill our tears, our toil, our sweat and blood to nature's resources created by God, right? We create surplus value from it, right? We own that property. We have created something by mixing our toil and labor with natural resources, right? And all individuals can do it. All individuals are blank slates. He's destroying feudalism here. Aam aadmi, middle classes, everybody can own property, sell property, hold, dispose, sell anything, property rights. He's destroying the stranglehold of the feudal lords who had controlled all land in Europe. Right? Wo katham. Then he destroyed, again, he freed mankind from the Pope, from the stranglehold of the Pope. Archbishop of England would make a deal with the King of England and say, अरे भैया हम तो Protestants हैं, but हमारा देश में जो भी Catholics हैं ना सबको उड़ा दो, सबको भगा दो. Deny them rights because they follow something else, some other religion, which is not the same as the religion established, the Church of England established by Henry VIII. Locke said what? Toleration, secularism. Governments have to be neutral, boys and girls. Governments have to be neutral. Yes? He freed mankind from absolute kings, feudal lords, and the Pope. Why the Pope? Who's the Pope? He is not an agent of God. He is a human being who's write the Bible well, bus. How can he decide what is the ultimate good life? No man can decide the ultimate good life. No man can decide which religion or which idea of the good life is superior. All of us are blank slates. We all have different experiences based on our different sensations and we're all tabula rasa. Therefore, no idea is the ultimate idea of God. So the state has to remain neutral, allow individuals, give them freedom and liberty to pursue whatever they want, choose whichever idea they want. Yes, boys and girls? Isne ye kiya. Then the last point here in the introduction. Yes, the last point in the introduction is, this was the past. He rescued mankind from the past. Then what was the future impact that John Locke gave? The impact that we still have, that we still see. एक तो industrial revolution था, right? हम देखेंगे और industrial revolution. Then you have the American Revolution. The founding of the greatest democracy in the whole world, United States of America, was based on what? Liberty. Who's the father of liberalism? John Locke. Yes, the New World. Right. And of course, one more point here, boys and girls, government has to be limited to protect the individual rights. Yes. He also talked about constitutionalism in a way. How to limit the power of the government besides there being a constitution. Separation of powers. Yes. Locke also talked about separation of powers. Kahan hai watertight separation of powers? In the US, judiciary, executive, legislature, right? So the whole founding principle of America, the American Constitution, all men have an inalienable right to liberty and pursuit of life, liberty and pursuit of happiness. Thomas Jefferson, founding father of the United States, proclaimed this. Yes, of course, he also influenced American Revolution ho gaya, then French Revolution, then Enlightenment. पहला स्लोगन क्या है फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन का? Liberty. Yes, he also influenced Enlightenment movement. Right? These revolutions, French Revolution, American Revolution, they all borrowed, used Locke's ideas as weapons. As weapons. Locke क्या बोला? Representative government. Right? The king shall not raise taxes without the consent of parliament, because parliament represents the will of the people and the very people pay those taxes. So if you're paying taxes, you have to have representation in parliament. American Revolution, War of Independence की पहले क्या था slogan? No taxation without representation. Right? So John Locke's ideas were used as weapons by revolutionaries, and history was made multiple times in different countries, different continents. Locke was an Englishman. His ideas gave birth to a new nation state across the globe in the Western Hemisphere, the United States of America. And look what happened. Industrial Revolution, groundbreaking, complete change, dominance of the West gave rise to two superpowers. First, Great Britain, his home country, the British Empire, then the Colossus, the United States, the sole superpower today. Yes? English Enlightenment, French Revolution, American Revolution, and of course, recently in 1991, Francis Fukuyama said, when the Berlin Wall was raised, which had divided Germany, Berlin, when that wall was raised and brought down, when revolutions happened in Eastern European countries, liberalism prevailed. Francis Fukuyama, he said, end of history. Liberal democracy based on market economics, free market economics, that is the ultimate form of human government. Liberal democracy, limited government, rule of law, property rights. Kahan se aaya? John Locke. So the triumph of liberalism, father of liberalism kaun hai, boys and girls? It was John Locke. Yes? Clear? We owe it to John Locke for enjoying all these things and of course for experiencing all these historical processes. Right? This makes John Locke extremely important, interesting, and that is the reason he is there in the syllabus. Yes? Fine then. One by one, let's study the same, all these points. Let's study one by one. Any doubts? All clear? Yes, boys and girls?